I have Margaret on the phone. She's got a sore throat, but she feels she can lead us in the Aramaic Our Father prayer. Are
Oh,
we
great.
ready for that?
Okay.
Okay, Margaret, go for it. Thank you very much. And when you're, yeah, I'll keep the phone on so you can listen to the conversation. That'd be perfect. Thank you. So she's going to stay on and listen to her. All right, so the subject this morning is we're continuing the Aramaic interpretation of the Bible. And as you remember, it was a spoken word of Jesus in his time, and that was a common language. And George Lambs spent 30 years of his life taking the manuscript of the original Aramaic words of Jesus and putting them into practice. And I think the thing that's helpful for us to know is that about 65, 70% of the Bible are visions, they're metaphors, there's a lot of things, dreams, there's a lot of things that lead themselves to interpretation. And then there's about 30%, which are direct quotes. And that's helpful to know. For instance, I had a dream the other night, and it was meaningful, but I couldn't quite understand it. And it took a number of conversations with Bobby and I to sort it out to get to understand the real meaning of the dream. So they're not, so I guess what I'm saying is a lot of the Bible leads itself up to interpretation. But a lot of the idioms and stuff that we're going to talk about this morning have to do with changing the meaning of the words that were spoken or recorded as Jesus had said. And I think that's important. And then someone shared with me, I'll share with you about parables, because there's a lot of parables. And again, parables lead themselves to interpretation. See if you can see this. Can you see that on your screen? Okay, what it says is about parables. It's a picture of two wolves. And it says, a grandfather is talking with his grandson. The grandfather says, in life, there are two wolves inside of us, which are always at battle. One is a good wolf, which represents things like kindness, bravery, and love. The other is a bad wolf, which represents things like greed, hatred, and fear. The grandson stops and thinks about it for a second. Then he looks up at his grandfather and says, "Grandfather, which one wins?" The grandfather replied, "The one you feed." I thought that was a good idea of parables. Now, Nikki, you mentioned there's a few documents I sent you last time we didn't talk about. Could you put one up on the screen? Okay, thank you. This has to do with the book of Revelations. Would somebody like to read it? Any volunteers? Okay, I'll read it. The book of Revelation. In conclusion, I must at least mention the last book of the New Testament, known as the Revelation of the Apocalypse. This book is a series of dreams and visions. The Aramaic word for revelation is Eliana, and also means vision, implies dreams. Its root is gal, and the means to uncover, lay open, and declare, to show, and to make known. The visions in this magnificent, alluring book should not be understood literally. Eastern imagery within this book is symbolic representation of spiritual and historical events, the imaginary point to a much larger reality. As an example, the revealer sees Jesus riding a white horse in the sky. The rider's name is the Word of God. Truth always rides a white horse. That is what the Revelation talks about. So he's literally not riding a white horse. Is there another document? So thank you. Jesus' teaching. In this section of the New Testament that we call the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus taught many subjects based on the Semitic thinking. For example, ye have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that you resist not evil, but whoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Resisting evil only increases the power of evil. To turn the other cheek is an Aramaic idiom and means learn to take the wind out of the other person's sails, or do not augment the difficulty. In English, we would say, nip it in the bud. In the other word, don't retaliate. It only encourages more drastic reprisals. The psychology behind this teaching is to weaken and lessen the evil force that may come against the individual. How? By not resisting the evil, it cannot escalate. For instance, if one person should say something provocative to another, and in anger that individual to strike back with force, then a fight might result. Better turn the other cheek and not respond to verbal provocation. So this is nothing new. If you've read Michelle Obama's latest book about taking the high road, it's what she learned in childhood. You know, some people think turning the cheek is a sign of weakness. It's a sign of spiritual strength. You're not feeding the wolf, the bad wolf. You're not giving in to temptation of fighting back and feeding the wolf. You're taking the high road and bringing the white horse that Jesus is riding into the light. That is your choice. Thank you. Do we have another document? Okay, nowhere does the New Testament Aramaic text suggest that Jesus questioned God or expressed doubt. Instead, when the original Aramaic intent is correctly understood, it strongly affirms that Jesus was fully aware of his Father's presence. Through his entire crucifixion, Jesus knew the closeness of his Father. The cross was the victory over death. It revealed to humanity the meaning of immortality. Jesus, through his resurrection, abolished the fear of death. In his letter to Timothy, the apostle encouraged the young minister with these words, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of good discipline," our disciples. and is now made manifest by appearing of our Savior Jesus, the Messiah, who had abolished death and has revealed life and immortality through the joyful message. So Jesus does not express doubt or fear. Let's talk about that a moment. Any thoughts on it? Do you have any examples in your lifetime where you took the high road? Would you like to share those? It'd be helpful to the group.
I think when you confront the reality of what is, and this kind of reflects back on what you said before, earlier, where if you don't avoid the bad news, the evil, the death on the cross, but you confront it, and like Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they do, gives you a different perspective to maybe reflect and reframe your thinking about what that means. And I think in the future, the rest of that document too said something to the fact that it's not about immortality that was achieved by Jesus. Doesn't necessarily mean we as humans are going to find immortality, but it means we can aspire to be vibrating at a high enough level that we understand that concept can exist.
Yeah, so taking the high road is really a choice. Where the humanistic reaction is to strike back, defend oneself, and Bobby probably gave me the best example of that I've seen some years ago when some members of the family were upset with her and they were coming over to literally dump on her, their grievances, their upsets. And I was not going to let them into the house. I felt the need to defend Bobby. And Bobby said no. She let them into the house. Each of them took their turn, and they literally dumped their upsets. And of course, we in metaphysics know most of the time that when we're dumping on others, we're really working on an issue within ourselves that hasn't been healed. And so she just quietly accepted it. She didn't run from it. She gave a beautiful example of taking the high road. I was so amazed by it that I thought, well, I'm living with an ascended master. Okay, any other examples? I'm sure everybody's on this panel has done it sometime or another where they put aside their need to strike back and took the high road. Any examples?
I got one. I was pretty independent when I was a nurse, and my boss did not like that. And I screwed up one day, and she decided she was going to punish me by making me call her at 10:30 at night, because that was my shift, and report to her everything that I had done on my shift. And I said, okay, fine. So I did that, but it became more of a punishment for her than for me because she had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I just went along, and finally she said, all right, that's enough. And I said, okay, I think I learned my lesson. Did you learn yours? It was like, that wasn't really a punishment for me. It was more one for you. But, hey, I took the high road and I didn't argue. I didn't give her a hard time. I didn't talk about it. I just did what I was told for once. And it felt good in a way. Because I didn't fight. I didn't give her excuses. I just accepted and just said, yep, I screwed up on that one. And I won't do that again, which I never did. But I think sometimes when we take the high road, it's not easy because our human instinct is to defend and make excuses. And sometimes there is just no excuse. You just have to go with the flow.
Exactly. That's when Jesus, I guess, was somebody like Mary Magdalene was being, they wanted to throw rocks on her. That was the punishment in those days for, having sex out of marriage or something. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Adultery. Yeah, adultery. So he just bent over in the quietness of his high road. He said the thing like, let he who's without sin cast the first stone. And so it's the same thing. And it's nothing new. Perhaps Jesus was the greatest psychologist we ever have known. And still we're trying to put things that he's taught us into practice. And it seems to me as we, in our own practices, as we take the high road more often, what happens is our spiritual muscle is employed more, so that we're less apt to do the reflex action of striking back, punching, or criticizing, or whatever else we do to infuse or to inflame the situation, rather than dampen it by taking the high road. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next one? Okay, let's move on. Anyone like to read this mistaken notion? Go for it.
I will. Interestingly, some Christian Bible teachers call attention to the point that Jesus never refers to original sin or to the so-called fall of man. We have no mention in the Gospels of the fall of man. What we do find in the Gospels is Jesus encouraging his followers to become like children so that they might enter the kingdom of heaven. If children are born in sin, why would Jesus teach his disciples to become like them? Do you want me to keep going?
Sure.
Mistaken notions. At some time in the 10th century BCE, a Hebrew scribe penned the famous legend of Adam and Eve. In the book of Genesis, it follows the prose poem of creation. Most of the time, this ancient literary piece suffers from improper and negative interpretations that are mistaken notions about the meaning of the narrative. This narrative has often been viewed as dealing with the fall of man, original sin, the origin of evil, the origin of death, and the evils of sexual union. Knowledgeable experts in Hebrew scripture and scholars of ancient Near Eastern history no longer hold these so-called theological ideas as tenable. But one must avoid the mistake of viewing this original sin in terms of a universal and abstract notion of sin. Such a concept is not found in the Old Testament. This notion is church doctrine and became part of Christian beliefs. Again, we must keep in mind that the narrative is a Torah parable. It is not a description of history. The Semitic writer, through his tale, tells how the first couple nearly achieved immortality for humankind. I can't see past that.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, while they did not gain immortality for humanity, they did find something else. They obtained knowledge for a price.
Yeah, the knowledge of good and bad, when did that arrive on our planet? Some years ago, Bobby and I took a trip over in Greece, and our lecturer on the bus was a professor from the local university. And she said something like knowledge of good or bad didn't even enter into the consciousness of humankind until like something like 500 years before Jesus, which is kind of interesting. Think of it that way. And when Bobby and I got married, before we got married, at that time, she needed to convert to become a Catholic. But because she is an ascended master, she said, I'm not going to accept the idea that we're born in sin. That's baloney. Good for you, dear. So she's helped me along the way because I've had to relearn things too. And what I've relearned is that sometimes you'll see that when I sign my emails or letters, I say, in love, in light, in power, because that is where we're coming from. Our essential nature is the nature of God, and it has no sin. There's no mistakes in the nature of God. There's no disease. There's no famine in the nature of God. God just is. Because God is the creative force, and the only creative force there is, that expresses itself through all creation, and yet is not absorbed by its creation. And God, what does that mean? Not absorbed by its creation. It's like its creation can develop in any way it chooses. It can develop illnesses. It can develop famines. It can develop all kinds of catastrophic things. But God itself can never be destroyed. It can never be weakened and can never take the low road. So then what is the purpose of our being here, one asks? Most of the times it's say we were spiritual beings going through a human experience. And as we learn to take the high road, then we no longer feel separation, because whenever we're into a retaliation, what do we feel? We feel separate from the person we're retaliating from. Or if we go to bed at night angry with somebody, the same thing. We can't sleep well. There's a dilemma where you've fallen out of grace. But it is ultimately, it's a choice. So we learn as we develop and grow in our spiritual understanding to take the high road. Okay, do we have another slide? Who'd like to read this one about George Lamb's?
I'll read it if you like.
Thank you.
Dr. George Lamsa claimed that 40% of the Bible is based on dreams, visions, and revelations. The astounding appearance of God and angels, messengers, usually occurred in the minds of the Hebrew people while they were sleeping or in a trance. All biblical prophets received spiritual ideas and illumination through dreams and visions. As far as we know, none of the early Hebrew patriarchs carried any holy books with them for guidance or instruction. According to the Bible, stories of the Word of God manifested itself in the hearts of these patriarchs via dreams and visions. Thus, the Bible contains the patriarchs' living encounters with spiritual forces. The Spirit of truth wrote on the tables of their hearts, and not just on the skins of sheep. Do you want me to read further?
Please, please.
Okay. The meaning of the word dream. Our English word dream comes from medieval English and early Teutonic roots and means to deceive. But in all three Semitic languages, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic, the root of the word has an amazingly different meaning. Helma, dream, derives from helm, which means to heal, to make well or whole, and to integrate. In other words, when the ancient Semitic people used the term dream, they were attempting to explain the strange phenomena that occurs during sleep. Evidently, they understood the process to be some sort of healing, guiding, and integrating mechanisms of the mind, as many psychologists and psychiatrists of today have recognized.
Thank you, Kevin. You know, Bobby and I have toyed with dreams a lot, and I used to have a dream journal. And it's amazing what kind of revelation you can get from that. And it's also helpful to have a partner, somebody like Bobby that knows something about dreams, that is non-judgmental and just helps you understand the meaning of what you believe. Since it's your dream, it's up to us or the person's dreamer to interpret it. And and so sometimes it requires digging. And the dream that I had this week was strange. It was provocative. I'll share it briefly with you. I was in like a hotel room, and I had a female friend laying on the bed whose room it was, and resting, and I had come into the room and I laid on the bed to the right, and we were chatting. We're friends, we're good time friends. And the door was left open, and a woman appears at the door. She's probably in her 40s or 50s, slim, attractive, and often has an agenda. She's coming in the room and she's challenging my female friend. And my female friend says something back to her, and she's obviously upset. And I mean, the person coming in the door is very upset. And so I try to diffuse the situation by saying something nice. And to my surprise, the woman that had come into the room took her clothes off and jumped on top of me and wanted to have sex. And I felt shocked. I was totally shocked by the whole situation. I didn't know what to do. And then she stuck her tongue in my mouth. And I said, "Oh, I want, this isn't working for me." I was about to remove her when the dream ended. Now, how in the world do you interpret something like that? There's no easy interpretation. Now, Bobby, would you like to share what you helped me with on this? Your speaker's off. You're on mute. You got to be unmuted. There's an unmute button. There you go.
Yeah, I don't recall fully what we talked about, but I think it was that the woman was being obtrusive and was not there by invitation. I think that was kind of the gist as I remember. Am I missing something there?
Yeah, you asked me to name the dream, and that was good.
Oh yeah, and you called it what you call it, conditional or something?
Vulnerability, I think. I think I named the dream something like vulnerability. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But,
I don't either.
yeah, but through further conversation with Bobby, I was able to, that female friend of mine was really a male friend of mine whose wife just, he was a beautiful caregiver for 5, 6, 7 years. And you couldn't ask for a better caregiver for his wife. And then her son came into town, and she threw out her husband, her caregiver, her lover, and stripped him of all his assets, his cars, his CDs, his guitar, his gun, everything he owned. He didn't have an asset left, and he was thrown out of the house, and he was accused of injuring her and putting a restraining order, which never happened because they couldn't find any evidence. So because his wife, our friend Renee, had an aneurysm on the brain, that something clicked in. And so what it told me was that that even though I wanted to, do something, that I did everything I could to help the situation, and nothing worked. And so the vulnerability is that I couldn't do anything. I was helpless. And the vulnerability of Renee with her brain aneurysm and her need to jump on me because she thought I said something nice and to appease the situation, that the answer was to give me sexual favors. So it was emotional instability that she's going through, and her husband, who's kind of the victim in this situation, couldn't do a thing about it. It was hard. He just had to ride it out. And so no doubt there's some karmic consequences to all this, but it really helped me through this dream and discussing it with Bobby to come to the realization that, I can't heal. It's not me I can't heal everything. I can offer help. I can offer assistance. I can offer kindness. But there's some things you just gotta let happen. As the Beatles song, "Let It Be." Mother Mary sang to me, "Let it be, let it be, let it be." Thank you, dear. Anything, other thoughts you have on it? Bobby, any other thoughts?
No, I think that you pretty well covered it, honey.
Thank you. Okay, let's get back to another document.
That was the end.
That was the end, honey.
That was the end?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to make a comment on your dream, Charlie. What came to my mind, especially after you identified the aneurysm as being something that changes behavior, when I've done work with people that have personality disorders, one of the teachings is not to engage and not to be part of the drama, and that it will often settle itself just by you taking yourself outside of any type of trying to control or change how that outcome could be.
Again,
And
just let it be.
Yeah.
I think you aptly entitled it vulnerability. And I mean, the whole dream was showing how vulnerable everybody was in the situation.
Yeah.
Inappropriate behavior is caused by many brain afflictions, like what I had, the PML. I'm lucky it didn't occur to me, but many people become very inappropriate with sexual comment and sexual innuendo. And I've seen the wife have almost a nervous breakdown when the husband tried to flirt with the nurse. And I tried to get across to her, it's not him, it's his brain doing its little number. And so in that case, I mean, vulnerability is the perfect title for that, because everyone was so vulnerable, and I don't know, it should help you look at it from that direction. and maybe alleviate some of the frustrations that you all experienced.
Thank you, Kevin. Who else has examples of vulnerability? You're right. That was a good name for the dream. And we were all vulnerable.
I wanted to say that when my mother was in hospice, I spent the last 2 weeks of her life with her, and she would have these vivid dreams, and she would wake up and she would tell me the dreams. And the dreams were very fascinating to me because the dreams were all about death. And she very much feared death. And the first one that I remember distinctly was she woke up and she started to cry and she said, "Where did they go?" And I said, "Who?" And she said, "The three angels that came to take me to heaven. They came and they dressed me in a white lace dress and they put flowers in my hair and they combed my hair and they were getting me ready. But then they left and they didn't take me with them." And she was so upset about that dream. And instinctively, I said to her, "Well, I think they were just exactly that. They were just getting you ready. They were preparing you for that final journey." And that did calm her somewhat. Then the next day, she had a dream that she met John F. Kennedy. And my mother loved JFK. And she had a dream that she got to meet him. And of course, the humorous part of me said, "Was his head intact?" and she said, "He was perfect. And he was so kind." And again, I didn't really understand that dream until I talked to a medium friend of mine. And she said it was another way of transporting her to the other side and back so that when the final transportation happened, she wouldn't be afraid.
Gave her something to look forward to.
Yeah,
She was disappointed they didn't take her the first time.
Right,
So
right.
Yeah.
you get over the fear of death.
right.
Earlier, we read a passage that talked about getting over the fear of death. And in my situation, I'm supposed to carry a cane. Well, I'm not a cane type of character. So I carry a 52-inch wooden staff, highly carved with oak leaves or whatever. And the staff I've kind of nicknamed Psalm 24:4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. And I acquired the staff when I was really quite sick, and there was a good possibility I was about to die. But that staff and adopting that verse just got me over any fear of death. And as a result, I've spent the last 38 years waiting for it and looking forward to it. And something as simple as a staff. And I mean, people know me in the city, not because of me, but they know my staff. When they see me coming, they go, "Oh, here's Moses."
Yeah, I love that, Kevin. Thank you. So that's brilliant sharing. I mentioned before, and it's worth mentioning again, Margaret Eden gave me a staff. It's a form of a crook, with a hook on the end that the sheep herders use to rescue their sheep or scare away the wolves or whatever. Well, at one of our Sedona conferences, we had, I believe, 4 or 5 bishops, candidates that were being consecrated. And so we put their chairs back to back. And so that the community, our community, could go up and do their blessings to help the consecration. And Kevin at that time he was probably about 8 or 9. I asked him to walk around with me, and I carried that staff. And he is at my side. We're walking circular around the ceremony and all the power that's being admitted because of the will to good that we're expressing. It felt like there was a vortex opening, really opened an area where a lot of power came or descended into the room. And so it amazed me, that experience. And I wish I still had that staff. It's like, oh, what a powerful stick it was.
A staff is incredibly empowering.
Margaret's asking if I gave it away. I don't remember what I did with it, Margaret. Yeah, but it is also a reminder, it's but God's omnipresent, and that power can be exercised through all creation. Now, would that stack perform a miracle or something next time? I have no idea. But I think the miraculous event was the community was coming together in prayer and acknowledging the power and presence of God within the ceremony. And our ceremonies are an act of empowerment. That's what they are. They're to empower the person to perform their deeds, their mission in life. And it is powerful. And I hope we never, ever lose that aspect of our ordinations or our consecrations. And let it be said, too, that this act of empowerment that Arnold Michael gave to us, the person doesn't have to end up being ordained. They don't have to be a minister. But it's just a form of empowerment, particularly if they have some latent desire to fulfill in their life. Yesterday, I talked to a young lady who just, beautiful young lady, a black girl at the baby shower, and she had studied and had been a major player in the field of economics and finance. And she found out, she burned out, that wasn't for her. But what she honored within her was something that's been waiting to develop her whole life. The creativity of pouring into the field of designing clothing. That brought the light within her. That was her fulfillment, her destiny. And so in our sacred ceremonies, we perform, we ask that person to consume that wafer and to put it into the grape juice, which is a transformation nature of it, and consume it so that you, as Bobby would say, you realize you believe one thing, but when you come into the realization of it in your mind, the power of that is like a jump start. So I hope we never lose sight of that as the greatest service that perhaps we perform in our ministry. Any other comments? I don't mean to.
I want to reflect on what you said about the vortex in Sedona, because we did have a ceremony outside in the patio, and we did open a vortex. I don't know if it was the same one as you're referring to, but I remember, and I'm curious what you guys think of this. We had people coming in after with other organizations. We had one particular person who was very connected, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that I closed that vortex out there because it wasn't needed." And I looked at him and I said, "Why would you do that without checking in? Because that was a sacred ceremony for us. And I don't know what the aftermath is of doing such things after a ceremony is done and we're all gone on to other things. But I just thought that was the strangest thing, that he would just make the decision to close it. without,
Yeah, who's giving him the
right,
power?
right. Why would he have that?
So the one I was referring to was inside.
Okay.
We had a lot of people. But it also is a reminder of another time we had that was a beautiful ceremony, and Terry at the time was like the sergeant of arms. While the ceremonies are being created, she wasn't allowing any strangers to come in and disrupt the ceremony.
Right.
And here's what happened. The stranger gave her a form or something he had written. And then Terry looked at it and she broke into the ceremony and said, Charlie, here, you gotta take a look at this. And the writing was such a perfect writing for the demonstration of what it means to be a priest, a priestess. It was such a contribution to our community, and then he disappeared. We never saw him again.
Huh.
So the gifts are many. Yeah. And you're right. And so when you're talking about vortex, we're talking about energy. And so when we choose the high road, we're choosing to leave the vortex open. We choose the low road, we're kind of closing the vortex and living in our egotistical bodies of needing to retaliate from protection rather than to the realization of the infinite presence of God, that's love, that's light, and that's power. And as we move more deeply into our spiritual awareness, that love, light, and power is what we have in our ministry to share. Because we are now a clear channel for love intelligence to the extent that we're not fearful. Almost time to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to leave. Blessings to everyone.
Good to have you
Hi,
here, Laura.
Laura.
Okay, Margaret's whispering in my ear in her hoarse voice from her throat, says, everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks,
A
Margaret.
miracle weekend, she said, a miracle.
Miracle.
Thank you, Margaret. I wish you speedy recovery.
I'd like to say hi to Barb. Hi, Barb. It's Shirley, and it's good seeing you and Charlie again, and everyone here.
Oh, that's Shirley.
Thank you.
Shirley, hi. Nice to see you.
You too.
I don't
How
see
are
you,
you?
but I hear you.
Yeah.
Shirley.
You hear me? Well, you'll see me maybe in the next week or
Yes,
so.
yes.
So,
I hope so. I hope so.
yeah, I look forward to it.
Hang on, let me see if I can. Margaret wants to say hi to you, Shirley, and I'm not sure I can get her on my.
Tell her I'll call her up.
Okay, now you.
We're not hearing anything.
No, I can't hear it.
Okay, she's trying to say, hi, Shirley, it's Margaret with a hoarse voice is what she's saying.
Hi, Margaret. I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, so why don't you call each other and
Yeah,
that'll work better.
Yeah.
I will.
And if you, Margaret, if you need Shirley's new email address, let me know. I can send it to you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, yes.
I
And
will.
her phone number.
And
I have her information.
okay, then Shirley,
Yeah.
would you send your email address to me as well as
Okay.
to Margaret? And I think I have your phone number, but might send it to me because it might not be up to date.
Yeah. Well, I will. And it was good being back.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, we-
missed you.
We missed you. We missed you,
Yeah.
Shirley.
Yeah. Well, I missed everybody, so I'm glad. Sally and Paula have been coming to visit me every week. And it's been so great.
Wonderful.
Yep, yep. So I'm living back in Connecticut. So,
Okay. You're
yeah.
back with your daughter.
Oh, I'm living in no, I'm not with Jane.
Oh, okay.
Jane's in California still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but but the rest of my family, I have three here. So, my granddaughter and two, and my son Greg, and my son Michael. So,
Wonderful.
yeah, yeah. So, anyway, I'll give you a call also, Barb, and catch back up.
Okay, sweetie. Nice to
Because
hear
I
your voice.
always remember you and Charlie, when you took me, opened up the door for my son Greg to come back. So I'll never forget that.
Yes.
And thank you.
Yeah, that was a God thing, wasn't us?
Yeah.
Mere channels.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So, Nikki, what do we have going on for next week? You know?
We don't have anything specific. We do have a speaker at the end of May, but this is the first week of May. So anything we can be open to suggestions. Anybody who wants to lead is welcome. Any thoughts?
I'll be at Mammoth. I'll be at Mount Shasta.
Okay.
I'll see if I can get the person I'm visiting with to speak.
Okay.
It's got a wealth of information. He's lectured to groups around the world and psychosynthesis. So,
That'd be
Beautiful.
great.
All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to Mount Shasta?
Okay, Margaret's talking in my ear saying,
Oh, Margaret. Okay.
no, yeah, Margaret, what are you saying? That's great. Yeah, Margaret goes up to Mount Shasta about every other year with her family. It has a beautiful aura around it, and by the way, good energy. So, and we're going to have a full moon this Friday when I'm up there, and I'll also be celebrating my birthday when I'm up there. So
All
I'll
right.
see what I can do, Nikki. I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, a
Happy
pre-happy birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Charlie,
Yeah.
there may be somebody when I went to, I'm just going to make this short. When I used to go to Mount Shasta, this being dressed as in a crazy suit came to me, and every time I went there, he would call me and he would ask all the people at where I worked at the center that I was at. He would send people home from there, from Shasta, to say hello to me. He was an amazing thing. I'll share it with you when I see you in person.
Yeah.
The man from the mountain, I called him.
Yeah, I have had some mystical moments there myself. That's one of the reasons I'm going back. And yeah, and Margaret just says she's had mystical moments there too. So I would invite anyone interested sometime taking a trip there. It's worth spending some time on the mountain. And the ancient Lemurians, per se, to have resided there. And one of the ladies that I met, Sister Theodora, was the gatekeeper for the UFOs. Anyway, there's and magical things happen there. I don't. That's all I know.
Awesome. All right.
I will ask Harry if she would like to do her come and visit and talk about healing and the things she is doing since she left us.
That'd be
Um,
great.
So I'll see if she can come next week and do that.
Good. That'd be wonderful.
I think so. It'll be good
We'd
to
love to see her.
again.
Would that
Yeah.
be just one experience, or is that the whole talk for the whole hour? Because Charlie was
We'll
going
do
to
the
ask
whole
somebody.
talk.
Okay.
I'm sure she can talk for an hour. You know, Terry.
Right. Right. So
So I will
Charlie,
touch base with her.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
been doing some amazing stuff.
Well, it's been beautiful seeing all these beautiful faces today. Thank you.
awesome. Great having you here too.
So Sally, you want to do a closing out prayer?
Sure. Divine Creator, you've heard our deliberations today. Charlie has given us much food for thought, and we are grateful for it. We are in difficult times, both within the ministry and within this world. It is in so much need of healing. And we need to use all of our modalities, all of our connections to you to help heal this world. We start by naming the names of people we know who need healing. And then we will ask that you expand our wishes for healing for the whole planet. We will begin with the names of those whom we know need healing. John,
Candace.
Renee,
Mark.
Billy,
Jeanette, Susan,
Fred,
Tom.
Jane,
Tom,
Hillary,
Margaret,
Kim, Patty,
Rick. All my old people.
Phyllis,
people of Ukraine, people of Russia, all those who are oppressed, all those who are fighting serious illnesses,
All the sick children in the world. And the hungry children in the world.
you've heard the names that we've given you. You know what they need. You know what is in their best and highest good and your plan. We also include prayers for the people of Ukraine, people from China, people of Russia, people here in the States who are having a hard time. Please help our leaders to see the light and to work with love and kindness. We ask this in the name of love. And so it is.
Amen.
And so it
So
is.
it is.
Thank you.
thank you very much, everyone.
Have a wonderful week.
Have a
Bye-bye.
blessed week.
Bye.